Did you know that the average person makes over 35,000 decisions every single day? Yet, what if I told you that 95% of those choices are not truly yours? What if I revealed that an invisible force has been dictating your decisions, sabotaging your potential, and keeping you from achieving the success you deserve? What would you say if I told you that this unseen saboteur resides within your own mind? My friends, I'm Napoleon Hill, and I've spent more than 25 years studying the most successful individuals of our time. Through my research, interviews with industry titans like Andrew Carnegie and Thomas Edison, and deep analysis of human potential, I've uncovered a startling truth that most people will never discover in their lifetime. The difference between those who achieve greatness and those who merely exist is not talent, education, or opportunity. It is something far more fundamental, yet completely invisible to most. This hidden force determines whether you'll rise to prosperity or remain trapped in mediocrity. Today, in these next 40 minutes, I'm going to reveal to you the invisible saboteur that has been controlling your life choices without your knowledge or consent. More importantly, I'm going to show you precisely how to recognize this force, confront it head-on, and transform it from your greatest enemy into your most powerful ally. This is not philosophy or theory. What I'm about to share with you is the culmination of decades of research into the minds of the world's greatest achievers. These are practical, actionable principles that have created more millionaires and successful individuals than perhaps any other body of knowledge in history. By the time we conclude our time together, you will possess a clear understanding of why you've been unconsciously undermining your own success, and you'll have the exact blueprint needed to reclaim control of your mind and, consequently, your destiny. If you're ready to discover the truth about who's really making your decisions and how to take back control of your life, make sure to subscribe to this channel now. Press that button before we continue, because what I'm about to share could very well be the most important 40 minutes of your entire life. Let me ask you a direct question that may feel uncomfortable. Why aren't you already living the life you've dreamed about? Why, despite your best intentions, do you find yourself repeatedly falling short of your goals? I've asked this question to thousands of men and women across America, and the answers are always the same. Lack of opportunity, insufficient education, not enough money, or simply bad luck. But these are merely symptoms of a deeper problem. The real issue lies buried beneath the surface of your conscious awareness. You see, your mind operates on two distinct levels: the conscious mind with which you're familiar, and the subconscious mind which works silently beneath your awareness, driving your behaviors in ways you cannot perceive. This subconscious mind is influenced by what I call your invisible council members' thoughts, beliefs, and mental patterns that have taken root in your mind, often without your permission or knowledge. These council members vote on every decision you make, and when the dominant members are negative, they systematically sabotage your every effort to succeed. Consider this. Studies have shown that up to 70% of our thoughts are negative and repetitive. Is it any wonder then that most people find themselves trapped in cycles of limitation? The average person wakes up, goes to work at a job they tolerate rather than love, comes home exhausted, and repeats this pattern day after day, year after year, while their dreams slowly wither away. I've witnessed this tragedy unfold countless times throughout my research. A brilliant young inventor with revolutionary ideas who never takes action because his council of fear constantly votes against risk-taking. A talented writer who never publishes her work because her council of unworthiness convinces her she isn't good enough. A natural entrepreneur who remains in a dead-end job because his council of security persuades him that stability is more important than fulfillment. These invisible saboteurs operate within us all. They are formed during our early years through the influences of our parents, teachers, peers, and society at large. Every criticism you received as a child, every failure you experienced, every limitation you were told to accept. These experiences have installed negative council members who now actively work against your success. What makes this problem particularly insidious is that most people never recognize it exists. They blame external circumstances for their failures, never realizing that the true barrier to their success resides within their own minds. They remain forever at the mercy of these invisible saboteurs, never understanding why happiness and achievement remain perpetually just beyond their reach. The conventional approach to this problem, positive thinking without understanding the mechanics of mind, is like applying a bandage to a deep internal wound. It might cover the surface issue temporarily, but it doesn't address the root cause. This is why most self-improvement efforts fail. People attempt to change their results without first changing the invisible council members who are determining those results. But there is a remarkable difference between the majority who struggle and the select few who achieve extraordinary success. The difference isn't intelligence, talent, or opportunity. It's their ability to recognize, confront, and ultimately reprogram these invisible saboteurs into powerful allies for success. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how they do it. What I'm about to share with you today isn't taught in schools or universities. You won't find it in conventional psychology textbooks. This knowledge represents the distilled wisdom I've gathered through personal interviews with over 500 of America's most successful men and women, people who built empires, revolutionized industries, and amassed enormous fortunes despite often starting with nothing. Through my unprecedented access to these extraordinary minds, from Andrew Carnegie and Thomas Edison to Henry Ford and Alexander Graham Bell, I discovered something remarkable. These individuals understood something about the human mind that the average person does not. They had learned to identify the invisible saboteurs within their subconscious and transform them into powerful allies for achievement. This understanding is what I call mental transmutation, the ability to convert negative thought patterns into positive driving forces. It is the master key that unlocks the door to personal power and lasting success in any field of endeavor. During my extensive research for my books, particularly Think and Grow Rich, I discovered that this mental transmutation follows specific principles that are as reliable and consistent as the laws of physics or mathematics. When applied correctly, these principles work with mathematical certainty to produce extraordinary results. I've witnessed men and women from all walks of life apply these principles to overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. A man with no formal education who became one of the wealthiest industrialists in America, a woman who transformed personal tragedy into a movement that helped thousands, a young man from the poorest neighborhood in Chicago who built a business empire that employs thousands. These successes weren't accidents or the result of special privilege. They were the natural outcomes of understanding and applying the principles I'm about to share with you. What makes this approach different is that it doesn't merely focus on changing your behaviors or actions. Those are just symptoms. Instead, it addresses the root cause, the invisible council members in your subconscious mind who are currently voting against your success. Unlike temporary motivation or superficial positive thinking techniques that create brief enthusiasm before fading away, this methodology creates permanent transformation by restructuring your internal council. We're not covering the wound, we're healing it completely. I've spent 25 years perfecting this understanding, testing these principles with thousands of individuals across varied circumstances. The results have been nothing short of remarkable. Lives transformed, fortunes created, and most importantly, individuals freed from the invisible chains that had bound them to mediocrity. Today, you stand at a crossroads. You can continue allowing these invisible saboteurs to control your life choices, keeping you trapped in limitation. Or you can learn to recognize them, confront them, and transform them into powerful allies for your success. The choice, my friend, is entirely yours. What you're about to discover is the same knowledge that has created more millionaires and successful individuals than perhaps any other philosophy in history. Knowledge that very few people will ever possess, but which you'll have in just the next few minutes. Let me share with you the fundamental principles that will enable you to identify and transform the invisible saboteurs within your mind. Pay close attention, for what I'm about to reveal could completely transform your life, just as it has for countless others. First, understand that your mind operates according to what I call the law of dominant thought. This law states that whatever thoughts predominate in your mind will inevitably manifest in your external circumstances. Your dominant thoughts are like seeds planted in fertile soil. They will always produce a harvest in accordance with their nature. Think of your mind as a garden. Every thought you think is a seed you plant. Negative thoughts are like weeds that grow automatically without effort, choking out the flowers and fruits you truly desire. These weeds, these negative council members, will continue growing and multiplying unless you consciously uproot them and replace them with beneficial seeds. I recall a young businessman I once mentored named William. Despite his intelligence and ambition, William consistently sabotaged promising opportunities just as they began to flourish. Upon examination, we discovered that William's father had repeatedly told him as a child that people like us don't get too successful and that the higher you climb, the harder you fall. These statements had installed powerful saboteurs in William's subconscious that were actively preventing his success as an adult. Once William identified these hidden saboteurs, he could begin the process of neutralizing their influence and replacing them with empowering council members. Within 18 months, his income quadrupled, and more importantly, he finally felt deserving of his success. Remember this truth: you will never rise beyond the level permitted by your invisible council members. This is why you must become intimately familiar with who sits on your mental council and how they vote on your decisions. The second principle is what I call the mirror of relationship. Your external world is nothing more than a reflection of your internal world. The circumstances of your life, your financial situation, relationships, health, and happiness are all mirroring the dominant thoughts and beliefs held within your subconscious mind. Picture your subconscious as a vast mirror, reflecting your deepest beliefs out into the world around you. If your mirror is distorted by fear, doubt, or unworthiness, it will distort everything you attempt to create. You cannot project success onto a mirror warped by failure consciousness. I once worked with a talented writer named Margaret who could not understand why publishers continuously rejected her manuscripts. Upon investigation, we discovered that Margaret harbored a deep-seated belief that she was unworthy of recognition, a belief installed by a critical teacher during her formative years. This belief was invisibly corrupting her work and her interactions with publishers. Every relationship, opportunity, and circumstance in your life serves as a mirror, showing you the content of your own consciousness. When you understand this, you gain tremendous power, for you realize that by changing your internal council members, you inevitably change your external circumstances. The third principle governing your invisible saboteurs is the law of mental equivalence. This law states that you will attract into your life the exact equivalent of what exists in your conscious and subconscious thought. Your mind operates like a powerful electromagnetic force, drawing to you people, opportunities, and circumstances that vibrate in harmony with your dominant thoughts. Think of your mind as broadcasting on a particular frequency. If your frequency is tuned to limitation, doubt, and fear, You will attract experiences that match this broadcast. Conversely, if you transmit thoughts of abundance, confidence, and possibility, your experiences will shift accordingly. Consider the metaphor of tuning a radio. If you want to hear classical music, you must tune to a station that broadcasts classical music. Similarly, if you want to experience success, you must tune your mind to the frequency of success. The challenge is that most people's mental radios were tuned to limitation stations during childhood, and they've never learned how to change the frequency. I worked with a businessman in Pittsburgh who couldn't understand why he consistently attracted dishonest partners and employees. Upon examination, we discovered that his own father had been dishonest in business, instilling in him a subconscious belief that all business people are somewhat dishonest. This belief was broadcasting a frequency that attracted precisely what he believed to be true. Once you understand that your external experiences simply match your internal equivalents, you gain tremendous power to create change. By consciously creating new mental equivalents, you automatically alter what you attract into your life. The fourth principle is the power of definite purpose. Your subconscious mind requires clear direction. Without a definite purpose, your invisible council members will default to their established patterns, typically oriented towards safety and survival rather than growth and achievement. Imagine your mind as a mighty ship on the ocean. Without a clear destination programmed into its navigation system, it will drift wherever the currents and winds take it. A definite purpose acts as precise coordinates, compelling your subconscious resources to move in a specific direction. I've observed that the most successful individuals in any field possess an intensity of purpose that overrides all saboteurs. Their definite chief aim acts like a powerful searchlight, cutting through fog and darkness to illuminate the path forward. Remember the story of Henry Ford, who held an unwavering vision of creating affordable automobiles for the average American despite countless failures and setbacks. His definite purpose was so powerful that it eventually conscripted every part of his conscious and subconscious mind into its service. When you establish a definite purpose that inspires you, it creates a new dominant thought pattern that begins reorganizing your mental council. Purpose provides the energy needed to overpower and transform negative council members into allies for your success. Now, I invite you to reflect on what you've learned so far. Which of these principles speaks most directly to your situation? Which invisible saboteur has been controlling your choices? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insight might help another person recognize their own invisible saboteurs. Now, I can almost hear some of you thinking, but Mr. Hill, this all sounds well and good in theory, but my situation is different. My limitations are real, not just in my mind. Let me address this directly. Throughout my decades of research, I've heard every possible objection to these principles, and I understand why these doubts arise. The invisible saboteurs within your mind are extremely clever at defending their existence. They've survived for years by convincing you that they're protecting you rather than limiting you. When you begin to challenge these mental patterns, they fight back with remarkable intensity. They'll present you with evidence of why change is impossible for you. They'll remind you of past failures, current limitations, and the opinions of those who doubted you. All of this is designed to maintain the status quo and keep you within your familiar comfort zone. Here's what you must understand. These objections are not reality. They are the voice of the very saboteurs we're working to transform. When you hear that inner voice saying, "This won't work for me," recognize it as the desperate attempt of a negative council member trying to maintain its position of influence in your mind. Some of you might be thinking, "But I've tried positive thinking before, and it didn't work." This is a valid concern. But there's a profound difference between superficial positive thinking and the deep mental transmutation I'm describing. Merely placing positive thoughts atop a foundation of negative beliefs is like painting over rust. The transformation I'm speaking about involves removing the rust entirely and replacing it with stronger material. Others might wonder, aren't some limitations simply reality? I can't just think myself into being a millionaire overnight. You're absolutely right. These principles are not magic, and they don't operate outside the bounds of natural law. What they do is maximize your potential within those laws by removing the artificial limitations you've placed upon yourself. Consider this. Have you ever achieved something you previously thought impossible? Perhaps you completed a project you initially felt was beyond your capabilities, or overcame a challenge you once believed insurmountable. In that moment of achievement, did the laws of the universe change? Or did you simply break through a self-imposed limitation? I remember working with a man named Charles during the Great Depression. Charles had lost everything in the economic collapse and believed his financial recovery was impossible given the mixed external circumstances. Yet when he applied these principles, identifying and transforming his invisible saboteurs, he discovered opportunities that had been present all along but invisible to him due to his dominant thought patterns. Within 3 years, he had built a fortune greater than the one he had lost. Ask yourself this question. What if the limitations you perceive as fixed reality are actually flexible boundaries created by your own thought patterns? What if the ceiling you keep hitting is made not of concrete but of tissue paper that can be broken with the right mental approach? Some might argue, but there are people born into privilege who have advantages I don't have. This is undeniably true. External circumstances, privilege, and starting positions are not equally distributed. However, history is filled with individuals who transcended the most desperate circumstances through the power of their minds. Your starting position matters far less than the direction and intensity of your mental focus. Consider this question. Are you using external circumstances as a reason or as an excuse? A reason acknowledges reality while seeking a path forward. An excuse uses that same reality as justification for surrender. Perhaps you're thinking, this all sounds too simple. Surely success can't just be a matter of changing my thoughts. And you're right, it's simple, but not easy. The principles are indeed straightforward, but their application requires persistence, courage, and discipline. Transforming deeply embedded thought patterns is among the most challenging work you'll ever undertake, but also the most rewarding. Remember that these principles have been tested and proven by thousands of individuals across all walks of life. They don't require special talents, education, or advantages. They require only your willingness to examine your own mind honestly and then systematically reprogram the thought patterns that have been limiting you. The question isn't whether these principles work. The evidence of their effectiveness is overwhelming. The question is whether you will apply them with sufficient persistence to overcome the resistance of your established mental patterns. Now, let's bring together everything we've discussed and see how these principles work in concert to free you from your invisible saboteurs. Understanding each principle individually is valuable, but their true power emerges when you implement them as an integrated system. Think of your mind as a magnificent orchestra. Each instrument, each thought pattern, and belief plays its own part. When these instruments are playing discordantly, the result is mental chaos, inconsistent results, and unrealized potential. But when properly conducted, this same orchestra creates a symphony of achievement that can accomplish virtually anything within the bounds of natural law. You, my friend, are the conductor of this orchestra. Until now, you may have been allowing various instruments to play whatever notes they wished, creating disharmony and limitation. But from this moment forward, you can take up the conductor's baton and coordinate these mental instruments toward a single, harmonious purpose. Let me share with you a unifying metaphor that will help you understand how these principles work together. Imagine your mind as a magnificent estate. Your conscious mind is the front garden that visitors see, carefully maintained and presented to the world. But your subconscious mind is the vast interior of the estate, containing many rooms filled with furniture and decorations you've collected throughout your lifetime. Some of these rooms are bright and beautiful, filled with empowering beliefs and positive council members. Others are dark and foreboding, housing your fears, doubts, and limiting beliefs. Your invisible saboteurs. The problem is that many people never venture beyond the front garden. They attempt to change their lives by rearranging the flowers in the conscious mind while leaving the interior of the estate, the subconscious, untouched. The principles I've shared with you provide the master key to enter every room of this mental estate, to throw open the curtains, allow in fresh air and sunlight, and rearrange or remove anything that doesn't serve your highest purpose. This is not a weekend project, but a lifetime process of continuous improvement and refinement. Here is how the principles work together in practice. First, through the law of dominant thought, you become aware of which thoughts currently dominate your mental estate. You begin noticing patterns of thinking that have become so habitual you previously didn't even recognize them. This awareness allows you to take inventory of your mental furnishings. Next, you apply the mirror of relationship by observing your external circumstances as reflections of your internal state. Your financial situation, relationships, health, and level of happiness all provide valuable feedback about what's happening inside your mental estate. Rather than blaming external conditions, you recognize them as mirrors showing you which rooms need attention. Then, through understanding the law of mental equivalence, you begin consciously creating new thought patterns that match your desired outcomes rather than your past experiences. You deliberately install new furniture that represents prosperity, confidence, and achievement, while removing pieces that represent limitation and fear. Finally, with the power of definite purpose, you establish a clear direction that unifies all these efforts. Your definite purpose becomes the architectural plan for renovating your entire mental estate, ensuring that every room ultimately serves your highest aims and aspirations. Let me illustrate how this works with a real example. I once worked with a talented salesman named Robert who could never seem to advance beyond a modest income despite his excellent skills. By applying these integrated principles, Robert first became aware that his dominant thoughts included a deep-seated belief that money beyond necessities is selfish, a belief instilled by his religious upbringing. The mirror of his circumstances clearly reflected this belief. He would unconsciously sabotage large sales or avoid wealthy clients. Understanding the law of mental equivalence, Robert began creating new thought patterns around money, viewing it as a tool for good rather than something to be feared or avoided. His definite purpose, to use his increased wealth to support causes he believed in, provided the unifying direction for these changes. Within 1 year, Robert had tripled his income, and more importantly, had developed a healthy relationship with money that allowed him to both enjoy prosperity and contribute to others. Here's a practical framework for applying these integrated principles in your own life. Begin each day with a period of quiet reflection where you examine your dominant thoughts. Notice any patterns of limitation, fear, or negativity that arise regularly. Throughout your day, use your circumstances as mirrors, asking, "What does this situation reveal about my internal beliefs?" When challenges arise, look for the corresponding thought pattern that may be attracting or creating them. Deliberately create new mental equivalents through affirmation, visualization, and conscious thought selection. Remember that this is not mere positive thinking, it is the systematic reprogramming of your subconscious mind. Establish and refine your definite purpose daily, ensuring that every action and decision aligns with this overarching aim. Let your purpose be the filter through which all thoughts must pass before being accepted into your consciousness. This integration creates a self-reinforcing system. As your dominant thoughts change, your external circumstances begin to transform, which reinforces your new mental equivalence, which further clarifies and strengthens your definite purpose. The wheel of positive change, once set in motion, generates its own momentum. Remember that this process does not occur overnight. The invisible saboteurs within your mind have likely been in place for decades, and they will not surrender their influence without resistance. Expect setbacks and periods where old thought patterns reassert themselves. This is not failure, but a natural part of the transformation process. The key is persistence. As you consistently apply these principles in concert, the internal resistance gradually diminishes, and your new empowering thought patterns become increasingly dominant. There comes a tipping point where the transformation accelerates, and changes that once seemed impossible begin occurring with remarkable ease. My friends, we now stand at the most crucial moment of our time together. You have gained knowledge that few people will ever possess, the understanding of who truly controls your choices and how to reclaim that control. But knowledge without action is like owning a powerful vehicle but never turning the ignition key. The question before you now is not whether these principles are valid. They have been proven through the achievements of countless individuals over many decades. The question is whether you will join the small percentage of humanity who will actually apply this knowledge to transform their lives. The invisible saboteurs within your mind are watching this moment very carefully. They know that if you close this video and take no action, their control remains secure. They are counting on your procrastination, your skepticism, or your tendency to seek more information rather than implement what you already know. Do not give them this victory. Do not allow another day to pass while these mental saboteurs continue directing your life along paths of limitation and mediocrity. Today, not tomorrow, not next week, but today you must begin the process of mental transmutation we've discussed. Here's exactly what I want you to do in the next 24 hours. First, find a quiet place where you can be alone with your thoughts for at least 30 minutes. Take a pen and paper, not your computer, but actual paper, and write down the answer to this question. What thought patterns have been limiting my achievement? Be ruthlessly honest with yourself. List every fear, doubt, and negative belief that comes to mind. Next, look at each item on your list and ask yourself, where did this belief originate? Who installed this saboteur in my mental council? For many of these limiting beliefs, you'll trace their origins back to childhood experiences, parental comments, teachers' assessments, or early failures. This recognition is crucial because it helps you understand that these are not innate parts of your character but acquired thought patterns that can be changed. Once you've identified these saboteurs and their origins, create a new, empowering belief to replace each one. If you've identified the belief, "I'm not good with money," replace it with, "I am continuously improving my financial intelligence and attracting greater prosperity." Be specific and phrase these new beliefs in the present tense, as though they are already true. Then, formulate your definite purpose, the central aim that will direct all your mental energies. This purpose should be specific enough to provide clear direction, but broad enough to encompass your most important values and aspirations. Write it down and commit to reading it aloud each morning and evening for the next 30 days. Finally, create a daily practice of mental house cleaning, a time each day when you will consciously examine your thoughts. Reject those that don't serve your purpose, and install thoughts aligned with your highest goals. Even 15 minutes of this practice daily will begin producing remarkable changes in your external circumstances. The responsibility for implementing these steps rests entirely with you. No one else can enter your mind and rearrange your thoughts. No one else can identify and transform your invisible saboteurs. This work is yours alone, but so too are the rewards that come from doing it diligently. Let me be clear, there will never be a convenient time to begin this transformation. Your life will always be filled with distractions, obligations, and apparent emergencies that seem more pressing than this fundamental mental work. This is by design. Your invisible saboteurs will continuously create urgencies to prevent you from doing the important work of transforming them. The choice before you is stark and uncompromising. You can continue as you have been, allowing these hidden influences to direct your life choices while wondering why success remains elusive. Or you can take control of your mental kingdom, replace these saboteurs with powerful allies, and step into the prosperity and achievement that has always been your birthright. Remember that you become what you think about most of the time. Your dominant thoughts are creating your destiny with unerring precision. If you don't consciously choose these thoughts, they will be chosen for you by past conditioning, current circumstances, and the opinions of others. I have shared with you today the exact principles that have transformed thousands of lives from mediocrity to mastery, from poverty to prosperity, from frustration to fulfillment. These principles can do the same for you, but only if you apply them with persistence and determination. Your life tomorrow will be the result of the mental seeds you plant today. Plant seeds of limitation, and you will harvest more limitation. Plant seeds of possibility and purpose, and you will harvest achievement beyond your current imagination. The power to choose is yours. The time to choose is now. Before we part ways today, I urge you to make a public declaration of your commitment to this transformation. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment below sharing the most important insight you've gained from our time together. This simple act of public commitment will strengthen your resolve and connect you with others on the same journey. Remember these words. The invisible forces that have been sabotaging your choices can become the very same forces that propel you to greatness. Once you learn to identify and redirect them, you have that knowledge now. The only question that remains is what you will do with it. The difference between where you are and where you could be is nothing more than the quality of thoughts you choose to entertain day after day. Choose wisely, my friend. Your destiny depends on it.